Easter is coming up this weekend and I'm feeling creative. So instead of bringing my traditional carrot cake to my Easter weekend festivities, I thought I would try my hand at something new. Today I'm making carrot cake pops in the shape of carrots. Say that 3 times fast. This is what they're supposed to look like, and I'm gonna do my darndest to get close to that. The recipe I'm using today will be copied in the description box below, and it's pretty easy, foolproof, and absolutely delicious. This cake stays moist for a really long time, so you could make it a couple days in advance. The steps for today's carrot cake pops are pretty simple. I'm gonna make a homemade carrot cake and some cream cheese frosting. Then I'll shape the cake pops, and then it's all about decorating. It's gonna take a couple hours though, because there's some rest periods in the fridge in between. So this is one that you probably wanna do at least a day in advance, just to make sure these carrots don't bring any additional Easter stress into your life. So the first step of this cake is to mix the dry ingredients. So we've got a little bit of flour in the bowl, baking soda, salt, and one change that I make to the spices of this cake that I will include in the description box below is I use pumpkin pie spice. This is a combination of cinnamon, ginger, nutmeg, pretty much every flavor that I want to have in my carrot cake. And I only tend to use pumpkin pie spice around the holidays. So this is a great way of using up that giant jar of pumpkin spice blend that I've had in my cabinet for a while. So pumpkin spice goes in, and then we're just going to whisk these to combine. Already smells like cinnamon. Okay, dry ingredients off to the side. Next up is combining our wet ingredients. Neutral flavored oil. I have avocado oil, brown sugar, white sugar, sour cream. A lot of carrot cakes use pineapple, and that's not my favorite way to make a carrot cake, so I prefer sour cream versions. This is one of those if you're like me. A couple eggs, 2½ cups of grated carrot, and a little bit of vanilla. We're gonna follow a pretty traditional cake making method, which is to combine the oil and the sugars and whisk those together. Okay, the oil and the sugars are combined and I've gotten most of the brown sugar lumps out. So next, add a couple of eggs, a little scotch of some of my homemade bourbon vanilla. Perfect. And I'm gonna switch to a spatula and add in the carrots. Looks well combined. Dry ingredients go in. Okay, this is nicely combined. Now it goes into a prepared pan. I just greased this cake tin and put a piece of parchment paper down just to be sure. I've not had trouble with this cake sticking in the past, but just to save myself some hassle later. And then all of our batter goes in the tin. Looks beautiful. So our cake is ready for the oven, 350-degree preheated oven. It's probably gonna take like 25 to 30 minutes. Because this cake is a little bit thinner, it will cook faster than the cooking times in the recipe that I'll include in the description box. You'll know that it's done when a cake tester comes out clean and it'll start to pull away from the sides of the pan. Next up is my go-to cream cheese frosting recipe, which is so simple, it's almost ridiculous. It's just a stick of softened butter, a brick of softened cream cheese, a little bit of vanilla, and we whisk those together, and then I'm gonna add a couple cups of powdered sugar. Instead of adding it gradually, because who has time for that, I like to add it all at once and then use a clean kitchen towel to cover the bowl up to my mixers and then start my beater, still on low, but contain the spray of powdered sugar a little bit around the kitchen. Ta-da! One scrape down, and then I'm just gonna store this in the fridge. It's pretty loose right now, and while I could adjust the level of powdered sugar, because my cake has to cool and the frosting is gonna chill in the fridge for a while, I'm not gonna mess with the consistency yet. You want a pretty firm cream cheese frosting for these cake pops because it's the glue that holds them together, but we won't know exactly how firm it is until it comes out of the fridge. We can always loosen it up if we want to by adding a couple tablespoons of milk or cream, and you can always tighten it up if you want by adding more powdered sugar. It's time to make some carrots. This is our model. We are modeling everything after this little carrot today. I want to make cake pops that are about this size. It feels like a pretty decent size for this amount of cake. So this is going to go off in front of me as my muse. And then also in front of me, I have a cookie sheet or a baking tray with just a piece of parchment paper. This is where our cake pops are going to rest both in the freezer and after we coat them in candy melts, turn them orange. And then the frosting that we made earlier, it's a decent consistency. Might be a little bit thick, but I'm gonna pull some out, stir it up, see what happens. And our cake. This cake baked up absolutely beautifully. It took about 22 minutes, if I recall correctly, and then it's been cooling for probably a couple hours at this point, so it's completely cool. We're just gonna crumble this cake up into a large bowl and start to form our carrots. But the first thing I'm gonna do is take about a cup of this frosting out and put it in the bowl. I'm gonna stir it through, kind of warm it up a little bit. It's been in the fridge for a couple hours. I feel like that's a decent consistency. It's not loose, it's not super tight. All I'm gonna do is get my kindergarten Play-Doh on. I'm gonna break this cake up and mush it together with the frosting just using really clean hands. So it feels a little bit sacrilegious to do this because the cake is beautiful, but you can see the side of the cake there. Beautiful little layers. You can see the carrot running through. So I just take my hands and crumble the cake up. I don't worry about trimming any of the cake off. There's some browner bits on the top. I don't worry about any of that. I just crumble the cake up in this frosting. I'm first gonna use the spoon just to stir a little bit so my hands don't get super messy with the frosting. Okay, that's about as far as I can take it with a spoon. Yeah, this is perfect. So you can see it's sticking together. So this is perfect. Okay, so I'm not even gonna wash my hands. I'm just gonna start forming our pops with my carrot for reference there. These don't look especially appetizing at this moment, but don't judge yet. I think they're gonna turn out pretty well. I'm finding that the way to do this is to kind of put my hands parallel to one another and press lengthwise with my hands. I started rolling them out almost like snakes, and that did not work, but this kind of pressing works pretty well. So I'm gonna get about 11. So this probably would make a dozen if you made them a little smaller and a little more even than mine. And then at the end, I just insert a skewer in and it goes right on the cookie sheet. What do you think? My carrots are much fatter than my Muse carrot. They don't look bad. Actually, they look horrible. They do not look appetizing at all. But keep in mind, this is carrot cake and frosting. They taste delicious. It's gonna be amazing. And we're gonna cover them with some Orangey Ready candy melts. And I even have something that we're gonna make a stem out of. These need to go in the freezer for a while though, before we can dip them. So I'm thinking minimum 30 minutes, maybe even a little bit longer. And then we'll get going melting the chocolate and decorating. It's like 45 minutes later, almost an hour. It's taken a while for my carrot cake pops to firm up. And I'm gonna get started working on the melting wafers that are gonna go around the outside of the carrot. So we're working on three different things now. We're working on turning the carrots orange, remember my model carrot, turning the carrots orange, giving them some of these little, what are they, root marks or like little scars that we're gonna color in. And I've got a variety of different things that we're gonna try to color in with. And then I'm gonna work on giving the carrots a little carrot top as well. And so on the bench in front of me, I have 3 different potential dirts. I have a little bit of cinnamon, some coffee, and a little bit of chocolate protein powder. So just a couple things that I could find in my kitchen that might look like dirt. Then I have some green licorice. These are just little licorice buttons that I've cut to different sizes and with some angles. They're about like 2 inches long when they come out of the package, but each of these is gonna be glued to the top as a little stem. And then the main star of the show here is what's gonna turn our carrots orange. And so the recipe that I'm following, again, will be included in the description box below, suggests for this size of a carrot cake, we're gonna use 2 full 12-ounce bags of these orange candy melts, and then a couple, like 6 red candy melts. And that will likely just make this orange color a little bit deeper, a little bit more like a carrot color. The ingredients in these are not something that you wanna eat all the time. It's basically just sugar and some oils and a little bit of milk. So it's not my favorite product to use, but for decorating something like this, getting a vibrant color, and even times when you're trying to temper chocolate, there are chocolate melting wafers that work almost in a pinch, just like tempered chocolate. I find them kind of the easy button. We've already spent a lot of time on these carrot cake pops, so I'm gonna go ahead and use these. Candy melts are gonna go on our tray. Let's do that many, see what happens. And then I'm just gonna start coating. Whew, that was stressful. A little bit thicker on some than others. I'm gonna have to do something to smooth chocolate out. I want my carrots to be smooth because they're pretty ridged where the chocolate pooled, but I think I can sort that out. That was an incredibly wild ride. I got there in the end, I think. You'll have to let me know what you think in the comments down below. The candy melts went on very thick because the carrot shapes were pretty frozen. So the cold from the carrot to something that is as heat sensitive as a candy melt didn't work all that well. So I tried a few different things. The third thing that I tried, which worked the best, was just putting a kettle of boiling water on my stove and using my tiny little offset spatula and my microplane, which are like the two heavy hitters in my kitchen. They always come in handy. So I microplaned off the excess chocolate, just grated it off until I got close to the cake. And then using the steam from the kettle, I put my tiny little offset spatula in that steam and then just ran the hot offset spatula over the top of the carrots. I was able to melt down what remained of the candy melts and stick on some little licorice bites as the greenery on top of the carrots. And then all I did to get the little lines in the carrots was carve gently with a skewer. A knife was too sharp, a wooden skewer worked well. I just carved a little bit of it out. And then I tried a variety of things, but I actually liked the way cinnamon worked the best. It kind of makes the carrots look a little bit dirty too, but it filled in those little grooves to make them look like the carrots had just come out of the garden. So all of that to say, we got there in the end. My carrots are much bigger than expected. These are probably 2 serving cake pops, but they taste delicious and I still haven't cut into one. So I'm gonna do that right now. Time to cut in. It looks great. Okay, I'm gonna taste. It is the perfect little cake pop. Delicious, really carroty carrot cake on the inside. And my cake pops are not little. They're definitely 2 or more servings. So do better than me and make smaller carrots. This is a fun one. And yes, I do think it would be a fun one for kids, maybe slightly older kids, but there's a lot of different steps that they can help with along the way to bring these carrot cake pops to life. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it. If you liked this video, please give it a like. I'd love to have you stick around. Please subscribe to the channel and I look forward to seeing you here next time. Cheers.